Righty. So the first, there's a few basic things we're going to talk about tonight. To be really simple stuff I've went over in the past on in webinars before, but it's also something I work on quite a bit with players come to the academy here in Austin, and especially, of course, all my certified instructors. This is something that I tell them I think is really important. I mean, it's the most important. I just think it's really important. There's times where if the player is good enough, it can certainly if their ball flight's good enough and they're a good enough player, we might work around it. But if they're not, I always kind of build these fundamentals in to start because I don't teach a lot of backswing. Not known for that. Don't want to be known for that. What used to be, but way back in the day, certainly did, and was overtrained in that area. And then I realized it just didn't work, and we were selling a lot of, not us, but just in general. I thought that was just selling the public a lot of things that didn't make any sense, and they looked good on video, just didn't work out real well as far as performance. Every player walking in the door. And the more what we found working on downswing, the more we started transition and downswing. You start getting the really high percentage of numbers of success rates of ball strikers, and people are really happy with what they're doing. One thing I do teach besides that, though, if there's a move in the backswing that makes your downswing better, it's legit. The problem is a lot of times if you try to you're working on 12, 15, 20 things in your backswing, and you could even be pre-swing fundamentals such as grip, alignment, ball position, and you get into all these things. If you're working on that and then you've got all these backswing fundamentals, a lot of times you'll get lost in the jungle, so to speak, when it comes to transition and downswing. You start to lose feel in the swing, and it becomes mechanical, and it's kind of which thought works. One works one day, the next time it doesn't work, so you add a new one, and so forth, so on and so forth. But with the backswing, with that being said, because we spend too much time talking about transition, change of direction, how to sync the body up, the downswing, finding the slot for your swing, and adjusting if necessary for the style of swing that you have on the downswing. The one thing I do talk about, I believe that is, you see it. I mean, you see it more and more. You're seeing it more and more this generation is the takeaway. So in the takeaway, you're not going to have a lot of forearm rotation. We're going to show the swing here in a minute. You're not going to have a lot of wrist rolling or under rolling. So I'll try to draw on this as I'm talking. But so if he was drawing the club back this way, you wouldn't see the wrist roll the face open. You wouldn't see the arms really roll a lot either way. And you wouldn't see him turn the other way, kind of counter roll or under roll. You see it with Dustin Johnson. We talk about that quite a bit. He does it late. He does it a little bit early and a lot late. And if one wrist does more than the other, you'll probably see it in that wrist from bending and so forth. But in the takeaway, what we're looking for is the main thing that I don't see with amateur golf is they don't move this side very well at all. So their backside, the rear side. If you watch, not everybody does this in their takeaway. Just the mass of the pros that you're going to see here, the mass of the tour does do this. But you'll see some people that get really lazy with it that kind of wait and do it longer. Like Fred Couples did it kind of late. There's probably more. But you're going to see the mass in general. They want to get this right. They want to make sure when they're timing this right side is opening up, the whole right side, shoulder, everything's opening up. Doesn't mean inside, because the baseline we know is on this right here. So he's going to maintain discipline with the shaft because the right side, these are two different things. Because if the right side opens up correctly, a lot of times they'll break the baseline, they'll pull the center of the shaft way inside, then they add vertical wrist cock upward, or they'll add a kind of a horizontal roll, or both or opposite of that. But they do have too much stuff. If you watch here, as I take it back, as I let him go back, got it pretty slow motion here so you can see it. You'll see as he kind of presses down into his feet. You'll see that here. He presses down. It's almost like, it's not a forward press, but it's a pressing down. A lot of players have that this day and age. That way they don't got to bounce. But if you look at this play, the center of the shaft, you'll see a lot of discipline here, and you'll see a lot of discipline here, what we're talking about. So it's kept the center of the shaft on the line. There it goes. Now it's on the baseline. And you've got a lot of right side rotation. So if I get all this stuff out of the way, he's got a beautiful opening. There's a lot of rotation here. Now, he hasn't done anything crazy. He hasn't dipped or, he just opened his right side up. And so As he opens the right side up, he's kept the club on a good baseline. And then from here, you start to see physical limitations change. Some people are gonna elbow positions will be different. The one thing you'll see that's unique though is that, or it's pretty much the same thing, is they don't have a lot of rotation with the club. You can see just like he's carrying that club back without a lot of arm rotation, right or left, or wrist rotation, right or left. He's carrying it almost kind of like a really long putt, so to speak. But this right side's really turning. The biggest thing you have to be careful of here is not turning the right side and lifting the arms and cocking the arms or wrist, cocking the wrist, not the arms, or turning like he's turning here, which is nice, but then it turns into a twist because if the arms get like this left arm, you can picture here, the baseline's really good, but that left arm was way across here, way inside. So if it's way over here and it had a lot of forearm kind of rotation to it, so if he kind of went like that, he rolled that outer arm, this arm here, and rolled it out, you're going to start seeing a lot of different looks. Or cock the club vertical, you start seeing a lot of different looks. And the thing is, you can still do all that, but the one common thing is when you're in the takeaway, you just don't have a lot of that face rotation, and you have a lot of more turn than what people think. There's a lot more turn in that back hip, and that's what I want to primary focus to really focus on. It's a great trigger if you have your swing in order and you're not one of those players that has a really bad transition, your downswing plane's not way over the top. There's a lot of other things that are more important, and there's no doubt about it. But if you have your swing fairly in pretty good order, it's not a bad way to play just having this as a swing thought, like thinking of the takeaway, having a nice right side turn or rear side turn, or whatever you want to call it, depending on what player you are, left or right-handed, and then thinking about transition, having good transition speed. And those are things that are he's probably going through his head right now, I'm going to have a nice turn here. And turn for him doesn't mean a turn. Everybody, when you tell somebody on a driver range, you can, if you don't believe me, you should try it. Go tell 10 people, just turn in the backswing. And you tell them to go turn in the backswing, or take your arm straight back in the backswing. Well, you can tell them whatever you want to do. And you're going to see probably 10 different ways of doing it. Whereas if it's built in, so for instance, his swing's built in and it looks fun, he's obviously very fundamentally sound. When he turns back, he goes, yeah, that's what I mean. But that's the deal, is if you're not videoing your swing, you'll have a hard time understanding that your straight may not be straight, or it's not a straight swing back. The center of the shaft is straight. We all know that. That's on here. If you're studying our videos, you know that. But what you feel may be here, may be not there. Like you may look up and that thing's way in here inside, or way outside, or face is rolled down or rolled way open, and so forth, or the hips haven't moved. So you have to study your swing from both face on and down the line to kind of get to know where your tendencies are, and then also maybe to how to recover. And I think that's as equally as important as anything, is understanding if you have a dominant move, whether you take it inside or outside, you have some wrist roll, you think you have some things, and you're just like, well, that's not going anywhere. I've tried to change it. I really spent a lot of time working on it. I need to find the recovery move, the counter move on the downswing, and then we can start talking about that on an individual basis. But if you get a lot of the stuff right, you don't see a lot of compensation. You'll see different arm swings, heights, planes, and different things like that, amount of rotation, just whatever, short swings, long swings. But there's not a lot of, and I know this is going to sound crazy, a lot of people, when they hear this, because you can see the visual differences, but there's really not a lot of differences between what he's doing, like a Bubba Watts is doing, Tiger in the Day, Roy McIlroy, Dustin Johnson. They're really doing a lot of the same stuff. They look, a lot of them, none of them look the same, but they're really doing a lot of the same stuff. They get the side of the shaft angled correctly. They get their right side loaded correctly, their back side, rear side loaded. They have a lot of depth. They do a lot of the same things. And they train in the gym a lot of the same ways. You don't see anybody really doing. It's out there enough now where players, they know that if you train right in the gym, it will pay off on the course. It's just there's just too much information out there. They know. They've done workouts where they've hit it bad and they go, oh, never do that again. They've done workouts where they go out and they can feel before they even get to the course that they're just going to rip it up. Their body's ready to go. Those are the workouts you want to key in for. And so a lot of different things like that. But in general, they don't look the same, but they do so many things alike. Here's another example. Louis. Same thing here. You'll see takes it back. If you look at kind of if we're going slow, what I want you to look at a lot of these players, and I wouldn't get real trigger happy with this, but something to study. I've got a video on it. It's a public video. It's called Press, Push, Rotation, and Width. And you'll see a lot of where this comes from. He stands up fairly tall and athletic like we talk about. Right before, kind of watch this line as he's going back. You'll see him see how the leg changes. He's pressing down into those feet right before. That gives him a trigger to pull that right side back. So he presses down to press weight against the ground. And then he'll start to do what we talk about. He'll press into the feet. He'll rotate, and then he'll have width, which would be a face on, but he has a lot of width going back here. So if you look at that, you'll see that move pressing down, or presses into the feet. There you go. And then here's the same. Basically, it's really the same move. I mean, there might be a shade difference of arm plane, but face is pointing right at the ball. The side of the shaft's angle, literally perfect. It's 100% perfect. So then when you see him do this, he turns and then the right wrist angles the way we talk about it. And you got her in business. He's got a lot of mobility and so forth. And he gets injured in the back a lot, but that's because if you watch him finish here, face on would probably show it better, but there's a big cup in the back. This isn't a straight line. I do want to talk about that. A lot of this stuff in here, you're going to see on the tour eventually, this stuff will probably go away. Where you see the club heads pointing down the target here. Like it's wrapped around the neck and it's curled around. It's a superficial finish. And as they become better athletes, better and better and better, when you do this, it's fake. He could cut his follow through off in half here, and it would save his back. Like if his club head, instead of being down the fairway, was even here, wherever it wanted to be, 3/4 finish, it would be more like his irons, and you can still create that whipping energy because your whipping energy is coming from the torque you create here. You could have a follow through that was right there for him, somewhere in there, and he could have all the same energy. He found what happens is when we play junior golf, this is why you see this, but then this is why it affects adult golfers. He should be finishing here would save his back. It would keep him from having a lot of those problems that he has on the tour. But what happens is from junior golf, not having core structure, strong enough core, strong enough hips and glutes. You can tell his hips aren't really that strong here. He uses them well in his golf swing, but he doesn't have real strong glutes in general. He wraps around, he cools, and he starts to compensate down here. And for anybody that's on here, it's a PT, physical therapist, or sports conditioning specialist would understand. You get in here and those spinal erector muscles down here in the lower lumbar start to act up, and you got hot spots, sciatic nerve pains. And it's just from doing like that. Again, you can cover all the speed that you need to cover. He could be right there. He could even be probably, it's hard to say exactly, still cupping right in there because it's just function. But if he was here, he would hit it just equally as far. A good example of that is if you ever watch Bubba Watson have a finish his golf swing, he really cuts it off a lot, even when he's hitting that driver and he's just bombing it. He cuts it. He have this monster long golf backswing, and then he has this really short follow through, and it's very deadly accurate. I mean, it works phenomenally, and it also protects his back and longevity. So it's a really smart move. You're going to see this in the future where the McIlroys are not doing it right now. So you're not seeing things that I'm talking about that are happening. You're going to see most of the players, the Jason Days, the Dustin Johnsons. He cuts it off. He wraps around a little bit. Then you've got just about all the players when they hit driver, they're wrapping that club. They're having that extra 2 feet of here. When an amateur does that wraparound, all this wraparound, because their hands aren't as good as a pro, when they're doing this, usually they just spin out of the shot, so they'll block it to the right or flip it to the left. So I just believe if players start working on shortening up their follow through, even with an iron, for example, you really only need to be about right there. I mean, look at Patrick Reed. Most of the tour, when they hit irons, they just stop it here because they can create all the speed they need to create through there. But driver, for some reason, it's longer. It wants to pull you around. There's things that are happening. It's just when amateurs do it, it usually gets out of control because they're spinning and they don't have good hands, so they end up kind of spinning out of the shot and so forth. Kind of gets a little off track what I'm talking about tonight, but I think it's important to understand some of these things because you'll hear about them later for sure. Going back to the takeaway, you get the little press. He turns back. That right side's really open. That baseline is perfect right there, and then that just kind of allows the club to go. For him, yeah, it looks perfect. He hits it really good, and he looks really good doing it. He does have another part I'm going to come back to here in a little bit to help kind of finalize some of that as well, because it's not just the technique you're trying to do. You'll see here at Rosie the same movement, kind of watch right before, just that little bit. I hope you can catch this. But just, he sets up, not real tall enough. He's a tall guy. Watch what his knees do. He presses down and lowers himself. You have to watch his body. Kind of presses into his heels a little bit, firms up, turns back, has the baseline, same exact as the other guys, same really exact thing. There's no hand action really one way or the other. Function of body and some of the other things are a little bit different, but the right side's turned. I would advertise, I think he has more right side turn now in his golf swing than he did then. But it's really the same thing. You're not doing anything that's different. And then you'll see, because this is the same thing, but if you see his club kind of goes a little bit different direction. It's close, but it doesn't look exactly like, Louis or Adam or whatever, but that's an easy way. They're all kind of working on the same thing, and this is a good way to look and see how they're turning their right side, their rear side, and they're not using a lot of hand action. You're just turning this, not just the right hip, they're turning the right shoulder, everything. That whole right side's opening up, and there's just not a lot of rotation. Then all of a sudden, the right wrist, they can do a lot of things. Right elbow can start changing. You don't even have to have that takeaway to play great golf. I got to be real careful with what I say. It's just something. This is something that I personally like. It's something that I haven't ever had to take out of our arsenal. What I would say is if somebody was a great ball striker and they didn't do this exactly the way I wanted, but they were really a phenomenal level. I mean, if they're, let's just say PGA or LPGA tour player, and their ball striking was one of their strongest aspects, and they didn't take it back like I wanted, I might look at it and see if it made it better for the player, but it wouldn't be like, if they didn't do it exactly the way I thought it should look, they would be, the ball flight kind of trumps some of the other stuff, because there's other things that happen. You can have a horrible takeaway, and I proved that in our very first videos, like you have terrible foot action, takeaway, arm roll, and all this. But if you know how to recovery is transition. It's like a counter move. Basically, the transition in the golf swing is a counter. You set it up, and then you counter on the downswing. How you counter is going to be, or recover, however you want to call it, in your downswing is really going to determine how good you are. If you can find that leak, those missing, those power leaks in your transition. A good example of that would be like a, Fred Couples, or a, Kenny Perry, Jim Furyk. It's not that they find power leaks. I shouldn't say that. Probably find power sources or strengths. I should say. It's probably a better way of saying that. They find things that work, that just worked well for them. Like if you look at a lot of those players that slow down in transition, like a Fred Couples, Kenny Perry, Justin Rose really does a good job of slowing down in transition and establishing transition. If you look at Tiger Woods, they go in and they find different ways. The way they come down is not all the same either. It's not everybody's on the same downswing plane. Their wrists aren't the same. Their elbows aren't the same. But they find the strongest. We always call it strong and weak. And so you might have seen, I don't have a lot of videos on this, but there's a couple of them where I'm talking with juniors, and we always have this contest. And for instance, like I'll take them back to the top of their swing, let them get all the way back, and I'll bring them down, let's say about right here, and stop. And I'll say, what I'll do is, obviously if they're here, that's a if you're in this, let's just say position, because that's where we're at, we're stopping. I'll stop them right there out of transition, and I'll say, is this strong? Because the side of the shaft's ain't literally perfect. Is that strong or weak? And they'll say, oh, that's really strong. And then I'll bend the wrist over, a little Dustin Johnson-ness right there, like kind of curl the wrist over. And they'll go, ooh, it's almost too much. It's strong, but it's like I'm losing a little bit, starting to compensate through that wrist, thinking of it a little bit too much. But when I start to make it weak is whenever the head of the club starts getting this way. So, or you could just call it vertical, like the hand position, the wrist angle would change, just would tip over forward. I do that. I roll the face, kind of roll it backwards, really open, so to speak. So if you know what open is, if you don't, you can go to some other videos. You can just ask me the question about it if you don't. But I open the face and I'll stand it vertical and I'll put them there. And when I do that, then it's like you can see, it's like, uh-oh, that's not good, right? I mean, you can just see it. They'll go, oh, weak. And then, so we play strong, weak. And then, so I'll do that on the way down. I do it with their body too. I put their body, sometimes I'll spin their hips right here because he's not spun out. He's in really good position, so to speak. But if they're spun out, that left hip, I'll cast the head downward a little bit, or I'll increase the wrist angle backwards. And they'll start to feel like it's not strong again, even though most people are trying to fire their hips and get out of the way and all this. Whenever I do that move where I open up the hips too much and cock the wrist, either more lag or less, however people want to talk terminology, it's not really how we say it, but like however you want to do it, doesn't matter to me. When you start doing that, though, what happens is the player ends to go, I don't have the power. And so again, if I put their body where it should be, then they start to go, oh, okay, yeah, I'm powerful. So then I bring them down. You can do this game the whole way through, but I bring them down here to the baseline just before the club's releasing away, the head's releasing away from the hands. So let's just say about right in there. And that's very, very, very strong. It's a lot of applied pressure into the side of the shaft where it's going to be torqued out from. Directional energy is really good. It's different technique for a different day. But bottom line is there's a lot of applied energy here. He's still firm but relaxed. We'll go over that in a little bit. But that's very strong. If you're here, if your body's right here, and just say static and you weren't even hitting the ball, you're just messing around. So very, very, very strong position with this entire body and entire club. If I had this club uncocked where the club head was already if the hands were in the same position, but the club head had already been released, which, face on, that's when somebody loses the angle, whatever you want to call it, which is the right term for it probably. That would be that, and I do that, they would say, oh, it feels weak. But yet most people are doing that. And then, or if their body is not moving or too open. And then, so basically you play that strong and weak game. It's a really good game to play. It's a little bit off of what we're doing here, but again, those are things that the strong and weak game are really, really, really good to learn about, like what's the strongest for you. And so what I mean by that, these great players find the strong flow or the strong energy or the strong position, whatever you want to call it, or all the above, and they go with it. And it may look a little underplay, it may be underplay, it may be overplaying a little bit, but they find what's the strongest for them and matches up with their style of swing. And so I really think that's a great game. I don't have enough videos on that. To something I need to probably make here pretty soon. So the last thing was, because we talked about in the takeaway, I want to go back one more time. Let me pull up. So as you turn back here, everything turns back. You can see the baseline of the shaft is really nice here. The other thing is the last thing in that fundamental is something you can't really see, but you can feel. You want to be firm when you do this. Your body's firm. That just means connected. Does it mean the hands are firm? Probably it can be. They can be relaxed too. It's whatever you want. But if you look when they do this, the body, because of how it's engaged, is firm. The core is engaged and all that. And a lot of that's because of how he's set up and doing some of the other things, but it's also because he hadn't used a lot of arm rotation and so forth. But what we call this is you want to be firm but silky. So in Tai Chi, that's a big thing. You don't want to be limp. So in Tai Chi, when somebody sees somebody doing a structure or posture, a lot of times, if you just watch it on video, you look at somebody and you go, oh man, that looks so weak. But then that's why you do push hands, because if you were to grab onto them and they were applying energy into you, you would freak. I mean, a little old lady would come up there and push you around. You're going to go, no, you can't. That's impossible. I can assure you it's not impossible. It is not impossible. When you have the right leverage and torque and energy and all that, and you can be relaxed but firm, and that's what we do. You have a relaxed pattern, but it's firm. So it's not like one of these give me top of moves where it's so relaxed, it's limp, where if somebody comes to slap the shaft here or whatever on the side of the shaft or whatever, it wouldn't fall out of his hand, that's for sure. And also if you wouldn't hit it, it wouldn't be so locked up in his hands that it was so tight that he couldn't create flow to the other parts. But it is firm. His body would be firm. If you pressed on him, I'm telling you, his body would be firm. You can refer to the rooting, where we talk about rooting on stage 2 on our private side. But those things are real, man. Those players are not limp. They're light. Some of them are lighter than others here. Now that is true. There's some that play a little lighter. Bubba Watson, and then they get really heavy. They all have to be heavy in transition and out of transition. They're very, very, very heavy. But some of them stay light going back. Some of them, Roy McIlroy's a good one, kind of light, but don't take light being like limp. He's light. The energy would be technically going down, but in his body it's actually more balanced, kind of 50-50. It's like light in this area, which is an interesting, it allows his upper body to flow, and then all of a sudden it starts cranking, And so let me just try to pull it up so I'm not just using verbiage, because this is all just 100% verbiage. Let me just try to show you what I'm talking about if I can find the swing. It's sitting at a great angle. We'll just work with it. But if you watch, he'll kind of press down, but if you watch here, he stays pretty tall here. He doesn't press down like a Henrik Stenson. Henrik Stenson right here would really kind of buckle his knees straight down and really kind of get ready to squash everything, which is a style. All this is a style again, but I do want to kind of let you see what I'm talking about. Same thing what we worked on. There's the right side. There's the baseline. Do you see these are all the moves are the same. Elbow position is different. Arm rotation is a little bit different, but everything else is really the same. All this is the same. But right here, he's very light. Then all of a sudden, it's going to be not light. See, now it's not light. It's very, very, very heavy. That's intense. Like if you played the strong and weak game and you put some, it'd be really hard to put them there, but for mobility reasons and like back mobility, lower lumbar, thoracic, lats, hip depth, quad strength, glute strength, it's hard to put somebody here and stop him. I mean, it'd be hard to put even him. It'd be very difficult for him to, he could do it. If you taught him exactly what you're wanting to do, he could do it in a heartbeat because he can do whatever he wants. But if you actually put him in that position, he would look a lot more like that. That's the position he would kind of look like, because that would be less stress. But when they go into that dynamic motion and transition, the whole, like countering moves, right here, he's starting to counter down. There's the float. There's the slow down effect. And he's finding that strength. He found strength down in his hips, down in the ground, and he found stability up here. So he found that strength not just for power, but for accuracy as well. But you can see how this would be somebody that stays tall, kind of light. But don't get me wrong, if you pressed on him in any angle here, he would be able to resist that any which way you wanted to go. He has a little give this way, but that's very, very, very little. He actually recovers. He has a little give there, then he recovers. Boom! There, you're not moving him at that point. And then when he gets here, he would feel like if you pushed on his body, if you came and just shoved him right here in the chest, it would feel like he's applying more energy back into you than you are to him. He would feel rooted. Like he's not pushing back towards you. He's just, that's probably a really bad way of saying it. I'll try that one more time. He's going to feel like if you push on him, because I do this every day with my players, it's called rooting. He's going to feel like he's just a stump down in the ground, about 6 feet down in the ground. That's what it would feel like if you'd feel like you're pushing on a post. But he's not stiff like a board either, right? His muscles they're contracting, doing different things, but it's because of the way he mechanically torqued his body in transition. And when he did that, he basically became like a center post. And so even though you got all this rotation, which could be bending left and right, and if you do, you're going to lose your post. He's so centered in that transition zone that he's just like a stump in the ground right there. And so it's really pretty phenomenal. It's really hard to get him there. Like I think I told this story. Now I'll shut up and we'll go on to something else for questions. But when you go and test like the PT or physical therapist goes and tests an external rotation of the scapula and shoulder, basically shoulder mobility on a high-level baseball pitcher, whoever you want to think of, the best one you know, best one to ever play, whoever that is. And let's just say Nolan Ryan, because that's the only one that comes to my head. He winds back. If you can picture him dynamically, and if you don't know what I mean by this, just go watch a YouTube video and watch in slow motion, like face on with pitchers, and watch how much their elbow, it's really just the shoulder mobility, how much it flexes back, and it's why they hurt their elbows quite a bit as well. But when they look how much mobility, I mean, the things like land, it looks like a shoulder lock. Like if you're in jiu-jitsu, somebody got you in a shoulder lock and you just popped your shoulder. It's so mobile. But you got to realize when we're watching them, that might be trying to throw the ball 70 miles, 5 miles an hour up to, 100. And so they're in transition to create this ballistic movement. So they have all this mobility that is what we call static mobility, right? Or excuse me, dynamic mobility. But as soon as you try to put that same person and you put them in an office and you test shoulder mobility, they're going to be good because they're pitchers, but they're not going to be anywhere close in a static, if that makes sense, a static mobility test as they will dynamic. And that's important because that's what I was saying when I go back to what he was doing here. If I try to put him in this position, he would be hard. It would be hard for him to breathe, and that's called compression. When a player in any sport, you don't have, this is just 101 energy, internal energy arts learning, or you can call this engineering, you can call it biomechanics, I don't care what you call it, but it's compression and torque, kind of the same thing. But when you compress the body, you can't breathe physically. Go have a 250-pound guy just lay on top of you right across your sternum and see how well you breathe. I do this quite a bit through jiu-jitsu, and I can assure you when they get on top of you, you don't have to do anything. I've seen guys tap out because of the weight. They can't get them off. And if they can't get them off, it suffocates you. If they know how to use their body, put it in the right spot, and they're just creating torque against you. Well, we don't really, good thing is we don't have to do with all that junk. But in golf, when you put somebody in here and let them feel that, they can't hardly breathe. That compression breathing is what we call, that's the first energy to Fa Jing, which is, if you've heard me talk about Fa Jing, which is, again, whipping energy through Tai Chi. Fa Jing is, if you were to sneeze, is the best way I can do it. You have this really deep inhale, and then it just comes out, and it's an explosion, an exhale. And it's kind of uncontrollable. It's like it just, but you can't have the exhale if you didn't have the inhale. So when it has all that, kind of that compression, you can't breathe, and you literally can't breathe, and then all of a sudden all of it goes into your core, and then it just explodes out with your entire body. That's the first stage of what he's doing right here. He has all that compression. So when you put a player in this and you truly load them in transition for the first time and torque them the way a tour player, one, they can't really do that. It's almost impossible, but you can get them to where they feel everything. And I do that quite a bit, and that's that strong and weak game. When you do it, they can't breathe. That's the first step to knowing that you're probably starting to create power. It doesn't mean exactly. There's other things you can do, and you might not. Because in golf, it's not just about that. You have directional energy, where the shaft, how you're going to hit it with your hands and the shaft and all that stuff. But in general, if you want to, when you torque your body a certain way and you ground it and root it, it'll be very, very, very difficult to breathe until you swing through the shot, which is what you want. You want to have that. If and I'm not telling anybody to go out here and think about breathing on a golf course. I know some people do that, but it's like inhale would be backswing, exhale would be downswing. But don't take that too literal. It kind of happens naturally. Your body, your breathing will tense up a little bit because of the torque that you're having into the core. Naturally, it's not, if you think about it, you can. It's just not a great swing thought, I don't think. And then when you come through, you exhale, and a lot of times the exhale, the way a person exhales is the way that they type of swing. So if you took the a la Payne Stewart, I don't have a swing unfortunately on here. Yeah, that kind of like that. Phil Mickelson, they don't swing a lot alike, but they have the same type of slow rhythm rolling tempo. It's beautiful to watch, really, a lot of times, especially when they're on. Their breathing would be more flowing. They wouldn't have the strong whipping breathing like Tiger or Rory or some of those. They're going to have more of a little bit more snapping and some of that you would. And then there's some that's just kind of neutral, which is the difference, what we call between a torque-based swing and a speed-based swing. A lot of that's connected to how you breathe and how you move and so forth. You just got to be careful when you're a speed-based swing. Any of them, just because your breathing's right doesn't mean you're going to be any good or not. But you do want to connect up the breathing to what you're trying to become. I teach more of a slow rolling breathing on the downswing, where it's more like that versus more of a like that. Depends on the shot too. Depends on what you're trying to do. But when you have a snap breath like that, there is a lot of speed there, but there's also a lot of out of control stuff as well, in my opinion. Usually that's happening as soon as somebody comes either into transition or out. And if they have that snapping breathing, they usually are casting the club. They're usually making a mistake with it. Rory McIlroy is not, but there's usually something. There's always yin and yang, but never style, but positive and negative. But anyway, I'll wrap it up there, and then I'll ask if you guys got any questions. I'll answer those, and then go from there.
Hi, Matt. This is Jeff here.
Yo.
Um, a question, when we're doing our comparison of me being a real green beginner
Yep.
uh, and looking to compare our swings against these pros, is there a preferred way to go about doing that? Do we look at, say, just, I don't know, pick someone's swing that we like for whatever reason, and then because we're not as or I'm not as athletic as these guys. Maybe I only hit what three-quarters of what they're doing in their swing or something. Or is there a pro that you would recommend I do a comparison against my own swing that maybe has a more attainable swing for someone, starting out?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. I think that when you're looking at it, you'll see a lot of the core fundamentals, even though they all swing different. And what can be tricky is even the downswing. There's not one downswing for all either. Um, I think that you gotta. I don't know that you necessarily find body types because you can find body types that are big guys that have a tremendous amount of flexibility. And you can't what we call don't judge a book by the cover a lot of times because you'll see somebody that doesn't look like they have any mobility. John Daly is a great example. It just comes right, guy doesn't do that I know of anything in the gym. He might be now, but I know for most of the years he was a now. You got to back. We'll back up because since I'm using him, give him because he's from Arkansas and that's where I'm from as well. The guy was a freak athlete, and from what I heard, rumor had it was that he could have kicked for been a field goal kicker for the Razorbacks, and that's been going around for a lot of years. He weighed about 170 pounds, and he was in phenomenal shape when he went out to the web.com. And or it wasn't that then. I think it was a Hogan Tour back then. And then he obviously did really well. He made it out there, and he won the PGA. And if you look at his body then, he had those big old strong legs. Looked a little bit like Jack Nicklaus, but better athlete than probably Nicklaus. But then as he got older, he gained a lot of weight. Even when he won the British Open, he started gaining a lot of weight, but he can move around that weight. You look at him, if you just saw the guy at a basketball game or something like that, walks in there with his kids, and you're just trying to measure him up, as we all do, unfortunately, sometimes, and you just try to think, oh, I wonder how they move. You wouldn't just pick him out of the crowd and go, boy, I bet he's double jointed. Or I'm not saying he is double jointed, but he moves like he's double jointed, and he would be considered hypermobility. So if you were working with a PT or a physical therapist or a sports conditioning specialist, they would say they did all these tests. They watched him swing. He's got hypermobility through thoracic into his hips, and he's got a tremendous amount of mobility. So you can't always judge it. And I've seen real short, or not short, I've seen the guys that look like Dustin Johnson, they look like models, just bodies right, their waistlines right. Man, they're so tight they can't do anything. They look like they're super athletic, but they're tight all over and they can't move very well, and the coordination issues and all those. So you can't. I don't like to judge a book by the cover, but I will say this: is a lot of times you can keep. You look at bigger body types, typically do a lot of the same characteristics, not always. That's why I say typical. I can't say all of them because they don't. And then if you look at the lean McElroys and the normal players seeing out here on the tour. I mean, I watched the Ryder Cup. I didn't watch enough of it. Unfortunately, I had to work. I was doing a lot of teaching, but the little bit I did watch from both the European, and you're seeing the more flat bellies out there. You're seeing more athletes. You're seeing more. I remember when I was out there with Wesley out there on the tour, the events I was with him at, and just how big the guys were. Their frames were huge. They weren't big. They aren't big guys. They're golfers. Their arms aren't big enough to you know, barely swat a fly. But I'm telling you, their frames are big. They don't want big arms, by the way. They're doing that because they're smart. But they've got these. Their backs are really wide. They're tall. And I remember the first time I saw Ian Poulter. Ian Poulter. I didn't realize Ian Poulter was that big. He doesn't look big. He's big. I remember the first time I saw Tiger Woods. I didn't think he was that big, and that's when everybody thought he was big. That's what I'm trying to say. Is like it is you want to try to get your body leaned up for sure, but lean does not mean mobile. But I would lean towards finding a swing like for your swing because I know it, so it's always easy. I think Kenny Perry is a good one for you. And when I say that, a lot of times when we say it, we get caught up in where the arm positions are, like how far is this back, how deep is this, and I wouldn't get too caught up in all that. I would look at the rhythm of his swing. I would look at some of the basics, look and see how you move, because he doesn't have a real long arm swing. I don't think I have him on here. I have him on my other computer, but See if I can find him. But you know, he doesn't overswing his arms. He's got a tremendous amount of power from three quarters. He's really, it takes those players have to be a little smarter than the rest because you know he's not built like Dustin Johnson. He's a big dude, but he's not an athlete like Dustin Johnson where he can just wind up and crush on it. He takes his time in transitions, finds all that torque, and he crushes the ball. He just bangs it, you know. But he does it in a really slow, deliberate way, and I think that helps most people. Not slow necessarily his backswing slow, but in transition slow, he gets really slow, and that's where I think it could help a lot of players. Length of swing, it doesn't matter the length of swing. I mean, I say that I'll always say that. I think length of swing is just if you can hit it and the club's over your back pointing at the ball like John Daly and you hit it great, I'm not messing with you. The problem is you probably won't. So the length of swing a lot of times has to do with there's going to be a compensation. The wrist have to cock at some point, overcock. There's no way you're going to have you can call it double wrist cock, and I think that's a good word to call it. But at the top of the swing, like where McIlroy is here, you have to start compensating through the wrist and cock it down. Well, when you start cocking it down, a lot of players lose the energy. The shaft kind of rolls backwards in their hands. They lose the feeling on the side of the shaft, and they don't apply it against the ball. They start to break down. If you get too short, your probably transition speed's going to be too quick. Best way I can do that, explain that is if you're putting and you had a putt, say 50 feet across the green, and you only took the putter back 3 inches, what are you going to have to do to hit it? Get it there. You're going to have to punch at it. And so you're better off to have more backswing and take your time, especially a long putt. Short putt's a little different, but like long putt like that, swing it back there, give yourself time. Then you can be soft. You don't really have to punch at the ball and start going crazy. Same thing in your golf swing. You want enough room. You want enough mobility. If you're a hypermobile player, most people are not. I am. So I'm talking to myself on this. I have to always kind of feel tighter with my body. I can get away with wrists and all this stuff, but I always have to feel like when I play my best golf, it's when I do, and I think most people do, even if they're not, is doing kettlebells and those things because it tightens up when I say tightens up, there's a connection between lower core hips, glutes, and shoulder mobility and all this. They start to connect almost like one unit. And I don't want to make you think it's like a robot, like they're stick welded, because they're not. But when you get to a certain level, and I've been there, I'm not necessarily saying I'm sitting here right now as that. I think I'm a little more slack. And I'm working on some training right now to get back to where I was just a few years ago when I really, man, I mean, I had it. It was pretty good. And I can hit it good now, but I don't feel the same connection. You have to train for that. You can't just go out and make a swing thought for that. And so if that's where the sport conditioning and sport-specific conditioning can really, really, really help with that. But you'll see guys or girls too, when they do sport-specific training, you don't see their swings changing a lot. But they're hitting it better. They start hitting it better. And that's probably the biggest thing. The biggest misconception is that you're going to adjust around or you're going to swing short to match your body style. That doesn't just work, you know what I'm saying? You're going to have a tighter arm swing. You're going to not have a big as arc, so you can kind of match your body type. It sounds good. It's probably not far off. Probably going to happen naturally anyway. Your brain is going to tell you what you can and can't do, but it won't affect your flow and your connection. And I think that's where players become dangerous, in my opinion, if they're training right and it's off the course. I mean, it really is. It's doing things. You could go to any CSCS, really somebody that's high level and understands the body, and you got to do an assessment. You got to know where you are. You're not going to know where you're going. You need to know that your right hip is really, really, really tight, or your glute's not firing, or this didn't work. Because let me tell you, it sounds silly, but at the end of the day, that stuff's real. And you start working on it. You make those weaknesses better, and then all of a sudden you go out and your same swing thoughts you had that weren't working all of a sudden are working. And that's the hardest. That's what I try to get my players to do at any level, whether they're tour players or whether they're beginners. Beginners is different, but like you're going to try to get your techniques up to a certain level, and then when you get your techniques up to a certain level, everybody plateaus and they go, well, I'm look good. I'm not sure exactly why I'm doing this. And then that's where you got to go into the kettlebells and specific workouts that are going to trigger you to play really good golf and hold you down while you're turning and doing whatever you're trying to do. And it makes it silky. If your workouts are right, one, they'll be instant. You'll go out and, they shouldn't take 3 weeks to kick in. You should be seeing results within a few days. And what you'll feel like, it's an after effect is what I like to call it. It's the only way I know how to describe it, is if your workouts are right, you'll go swing a club. And then when you get done swinging, you go, wow, that was me. I can't believe that was me. I felt really loose. I felt connected, and I was like, that's why you want to make that a habit, because those are not swing thoughts. Swing thoughts will not do that. If they did, I don't know them. And I've been doing this. I've been around some of the best, supposedly the top 10 best guys in the world. I've been around every single one of them, whether they flew me in to train them or I was a kid searching them out. But I can tell you, nobody can do that. There's nobody on this earth that can go in and make somebody flow. You can teach them principles in a golf lesson, so you can teach them fundamentals. You can teach them the things, everybody's kind of teaching whatever they want to teach, won't matter, but you can't put flow in there. You can teach it you can teach them off the course, whether a la Tai Chi or whatever it may be, or kettlebells or whatever you're doing, or even if you're just saying, all right, well, I'm just going to go deadlifts and we're going to work with joint mobility, work TRX, we're going to do some one-legged balance things. Totally stuff that we don't really even do. But it's still good functional stuff, and it works. Those things will start to create flow. You can be taught how to flow. Every martial arts class in the world, if you're a white belt, you're going to flow different. Even in jiu-jitsu, for example, they get in there and everybody goes in there locked. You get on the ground, you get somebody around you, and everybody locks up and they squeeze, and they quit breathing and they just freeze. It's the worst thing you can do. You want to be moving and mobile and going and doing all these things. So you're keeping that silky, but some people don't. They're just so frozen. They just get so stressed. They have no idea what to do, so they just don't move at all. You can be taught that. So you see that same person that comes in and does that. They train for a lot. They get comfortable being in competition, and the next thing you know, they're in jiu-jitsu, and then they're rolling around like they're 5 years old, but they're 50, but they're smooth and they're silky because, one, they know what they're doing, and two, they're training. Because jiu-jitsu, you have techniques, but you're working out. You're doing functional training for that every day to make that. And so in Tai Chi, that's all they talk about. Flow, flow, flow. You have structure and alignments and all that, but then after you have all that, it's flow. And then, well, that's just a word. So then it's like there's a specific. You can YouTube this, and I don't know which one the best one. I think we probably have some on our site, but silk reeling in Tai Chi. Silk reeling is really, really, really good. It's really boring for a lot of people, which makes it work better because it slows their brain down it's almost like a movement meditation. It's boring at first, I shouldn't say it's boring. It's boring at first, and then after you get past the first 5 minutes, if you're doing it right, it'll start changing. It takes a while, though. That's the trick. It takes a while to get that silkiness, but it can be taught. I've seen some of the most tight, immobile, just unathletic, guys that thought they were really good athletes. But, I don't consider a great athlete by what their physical makeup looks like. I consider a really good, and maybe I say this for golf because it is different, but it's like how they flow, like how connected and how well they flow joint to joint. And that's a big deal in our sport. And that's the only one that matters. I don't have anybody else on here for anything other than else than golf. So those two things are the most important things, your connection of energy and then your flow. And if you put those two together, and there's not a swing thought for that. There are, slow down effect helps with that. Load into what we talked about tonight, that helps with that. But those are not that is not like specific to connection and flow. You have to do those things in the gym, and you have to understand them conceptually first. Then you got to train for them, and then you start to acquire them, and then it becomes you in your. It's not even a swing thought. It just becomes you start moving that way. You start swinging that way because that's how you're designed to move. Silk reeling is really good. We have videos. We on our private site, we've got those. They're public too. There's probably 4 or 5 videos where I throw the Tai Chi in there, and I'll show you how to get really relaxed but not flimsy. And then just working in those patterns. And if you don't know it, and some people, I do know this being my age now, it is different. If you've never trained in martial arts and you have no idea what you're doing, and you just like, I just think I'm swinging my arms in circles, you might be. That's when I would tell you to find somebody and say, look, I don't want to learn Tai Chi. I want to learn how to, if you find somebody in your area that's really high level, and you probably do a private session or two and say, look, all I want to do is make this work for my golf swing. I want to learn Fa Jing, and I want to learn how to do some silk ruling energy training and convert it only to the patterns for golf, not martial arts or not for, meditation in the park or whatever it would be. Because if you get in there and you start doing Tai Chi, you're going to be in there doing hundreds of movements, and they're all great and everything, but you're going to be spending more time doing that than you are playing golf, and that's not the goal. You can put 3, 4, 5 forms together that not even forms, but just principles of energy in Tai Chi, internal energy, which is the most important, and work on those basic fundamentals of Tai Chi and apply it in a golf format, and you'll have more, you'll get that, you're going to get that connection, you're going to get that flow, and it's going to be a natural part of your swing, because everybody I have on here is going to be, they always work on the external part, or they're working on swing thoughts. Everybody does. Even in our style, we don't teach a lot of swing thoughts, but you're going to be working on them to change your motion and all those things. But where the players really take off is when they take that, working on their motion and all that stuff, but then obviously taking it and getting that second most, and it's probably one of the most important at a certain point, is getting that the kettlebells and the basic Tai Chi principles to help you understand how to where our whole system came from. So anyway, it's kind of a long story, but I think that'll help a lot of players that are going to be listening to this. That's for sure.
That's great. Thank you, Matt, very much.
Thank you.
Dave Williams, I got a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just back on some of these model swings, I just want to get your thoughts on this. A lot of these guys, they look like when they're swinging back, it's almost like, I'm just curious to see where this fits in with your thinking. It almost looks to me like they're still finishing their backswing, and they're already started down. Like they look like Bubba, for instance, when he's swinging, like it's almost like his club is still working backwards.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's the flow timing, but it's almost like you can see that their energy's already started down to the ball, but their club, they look like they're still moving their backswing back, right?
Yeah, so what you don't want to do is that the biggest mistake you'll run into is if you measure it, you're going to see some of that. But what they're really doing, as soon as they get, so it's like here, then you'll start to see their hips will start to run a little bit and all that. That's just momentum, and it's counter momentum. And the problem with that is it's the worst thing you can do visually for your eyes. What you really want to think of them doing, I tell you what these guys are feeling. They feel when they get up here to the top that they just load both legs straight down. They're completely centered, and then as they unwind here, this unwinds together. So it's all connected. That's what they're feeling. They don't feel, and if they try to do that with their hips, you're not going to be talking about them for very long. You will see it. Now, your eyes aren't lying to you, but what you're trying to do, and that's it's the very first videos where you're talking about centering, pressure, getting in transitioning and sinking, but not opening. Because when this starts to open, especially because people are doing this as swing thoughts, and that's what I'm talking about, as swing thoughts. When this starts opening right here, and you're trying to physically open it just a little bit, it's going to be terrible. Most people are trying to spin that lead hip wide open to get clear through impact. When you do, this club's typically, for most amateurs, is going to kick out, so you're going to lose the angle. You're going to outrun the club. You're going to create too much distance from your body to club. So I'll explain that. That'll look different when I get down. So when I get here, his body and club, it's a really nice relationship here. That's pretty good. But if I had his hips, if I kicked him out here just a little bit more and opened him up and then left his arms back here, he's probably going to hit even Dustin Johnson. He's going to start to lose his timing. Most people, what they're seeing these small movements. They're little bitty baby movements. And then you're seeing an effect a lot of times of an impact that, they're cleared up wherever they might be. There's no amount. It's actually a lot less than what people think, that's for sure. But you see the body of work at impact, and then so people, what happens? They get at impact, and they see, oh yeah, he's cleared out or whatever, and they start trying to wheel it wide open, but they're doing it in their backswing. They'll get right here, and then they'll try to counter and open those hips way up right here and swing the club down, and then what they do is they outrun the club. We call it outrunning it because the reason why we call it outrunning it, it's just a simple name. It's not basically just layman's terms. Is outrunning it is if you lose the relationship of your body to club. That's changing all the way up here and here. He's right on the edge of that. He could be a little bit better there. He could contain, believe it or not, he could contain more energy even right here. He's already outran it a little bit, but it's not enough. He's like in a really good gray area, but he could still have his hips resisted a little bit more back this way if he wanted to, and it would only hit it further. And that's hard for most people to believe, but that's true. He would hit it more efficient, which is hard to believe because he's the best ball striker on the tour, but he is losing a little bit. How do you train for that? Is it a big deal? Yeah, it could be, because where it hurts him is in his back. He gets back injury sometimes because if you outrun it, your club's behind. You're going to, especially with drive, he doesn't do it here, but if you notice his back's pretty flat right there. It's really good on the spine. But if he was outrunning it more with a driver, you would start to see a little bit more cup in his back, a little bit more like Louis earlier. You'd start seeing a more cup in this area and a little bit more tilt from the backside, the top part of the spine, bending backwards, kind of a la hips forward. And that's called shearing on the spine, and that is a fast way to get injured. And you do, what happens a lot of times is you'll see amateurs, they'll get up to the top of their swing right here, and instead of collecting the club and just staying there, like a slow down effect, let everything stop. If they let everything stop, then everything moves through the ball better this way. It does. I can't remember the last time I ever saw anybody that didn't do it that came to the range. Now they might not hit it as good at first because it's a weird feel for them. They're not used to feeling like it. But a lot of times they'll get here and then they'll jump real quick with their hips. They'll snap real quick, real fast with their hips kind of back to the left. And as soon as they do that, their hips also, you can't see it from here, their hips are pushed forward, so to kind of cut towards the ball. As soon as they do this, they also cast the energy of the side of the club, which is another, that's like, that is the essence of what we do. You lose energy at the side of the club, you're done. But they'll do both. They'll snap the hips. They'll create too much distance. They outrun. Their hips are too far away from their arms. They'll get too far away over here. They cast the club at the same time. Then their body will stop at impact. So so if they're looking down the line and say, man, I can't get through the ball or whatever it is, But it's because what happened was you jumped here. You cast the club. Your brain knows it's too smart. It knows, okay, I just got to stiffen up, not move. So it just stiffens and you cast. You flick at the ball, you release the club early, and then all of a sudden you have what we call this fake finish. You'll finish just like him. You'll finish really pretty and all that. But it's a fake finish. It's because what happened was the player was trying to open up in transition, trying to do this move right here. And so when they try to do that, they'll overdo it, then they stop and they cast at the same time. The body shuts down, and then they flip it and they fall through, and it looks great, and the ball won't go where they want it to. What you want to do is you want to feel like you're staying in this position for about 3 seconds where there's no movement. The body's not moving. There's absolutely no rotation this way. There is no rotation this way. There's no rotation this way. There's no rotation that way or energy going that way. You want to feel like you stay almost like in a pause for about 2 to 3 seconds. Just a long pause. And then don't explode out of that because you're going to have a lot of torque. And then you just come through. You'll come through smooth. And what would happen if you video it, you'd start seeing more your body and club working as a unit where it's not getting too far away, or your arms aren't getting too close, and it can go either way. You'll start seeing it, and that. So that, and that, I don't know. That's like there's a couple guys that are teaching that right now as well. I always thought I was the only guy doing it, and I said not two. I know one other guy doing it. He's a very good instructor as well, and that's the only guys I know that aren't teaching all this. And I'm not saying there's not more. I don't listen to everybody's stuff, so it's not one of those things where I don't know everything that's out there. But the stuff that I have heard, I haven't heard anybody talking about staying in transition. The longer you stay in transition and stop like that and let your body and club stop together, I'm telling you, you'll start moving through the ball way more efficiently. Your sequencing of shaft to body and club will feel silkier and more as one unit, and you'll be happier. There's just no doubt about it. So are your eyes lined too? No, I don't, not at all. They're just not doing that. They're not opening up their hips in transition, I'm telling you. There's momentum. It goes back to dynamic motion. only because what'll happen is if you're swinging, just you swing, but what'll happen is somebody will try to open up their body, they'll try to counter, kick their hips back the other way, and as they're swinging to the top, they'll try to kick their hips back the other way and do all that stuff, and you just create too much distance. The club casts away. It's just kind of common sense. Or if you hang on to it, it still creates a distancing issue, and the brain can't signal from the body to club what's going on. So it just, tell them what's going to happen. The energy's going everywhere. Whereas if you stop up here at the top and you let everything collect in the slowdown effect, the true float, where you just let arms stop, body stop for it feels like 3 seconds, and then all of a sudden they come together. Your brain can signal to body and club like, all right, let's go, and they come together. If you don't have that feeling, you're not doing something probably right. And you don't always have to have a feeling. If you're playing great golf and you're a great golfer, sometimes that's not. I'm not saying it's necessarily your swing thought. I'm just saying that's what you better be. If you're trying to work on opening up out of transition, it's going to be way too early. Your body will stop. You won't rotate through impact, and if you do, you'll be way outran anyway. So it's just one of those things. So it's a good question because, but it's just not what you want to do. The later you can keep torque in the body, in the upper and lower body, the longer you can keep torquing it and resist that all the way even down. There's drills we do where we resist all this down. The look wouldn't be like that. The look would be whatever this is. That's the look. That's fine. There's drills you can do to learn how to resist better through the core so you have more connection to body and club. Because the pros, this is what tricks a lot of the amateurs is the amateurs are trying to all go like they think the pros are just wheeling out like this. And I'm not saying they're not turning through the ball. I'm not saying they wouldn't. But in reality, their muscles are cutting back up into them this way. There's a lot of pressure still going this way. There's a lot of pressure still up here, not cocking the wrist, but there's still pressure and resistance up here. That's where that can be misleading, and that's what is most important. Because when you start trying to open these muscles, you're going to disengage from the core. You start using the lower lumbar and the back part of the spine, and odds are you're going to tip the shaft down and cast it, and your body's going to raise up. When you're done, when you've done those two movements, this whole unit won't move, and that's what most people see. But it starts in transition. That's why I still think, I could, if all I ever did is went to the driving range and taught transition, that's it, and nothing else, not grip, not anything else, just how them get better in transition. That's a real legit lesson where everybody can benefit, everybody. So I hope that helps you, answers your question. I know exactly what you're seeing, and I'm not saying your eyes are, oh, they're not doing that. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that they're not thinking of doing that, I can assure you. It's their body. You get into, those guys are your guys we're talking about are they're hypermobile, but they're letting everything collect at the top, and then they're coming through together. But you're seeing the differences, that swiveling and all that stuff as the club's kind of swinging back still and all that, but that's not what they're trying to do. If they tried to do it, they wouldn't be on tour much longer. It would be really bad for them.
Matt, you don't talk much about equipment very much. I just, we're coming into the time now, even in my own set, like I'm at it now for 6 years, and I'm just wondering what I should be looking at out there. And there's just there's that many adjustable drivers and that many, game improvement irons, and there's all sorts of is it a matter of getting fit? Is there, I don't know. I haven't really had your thoughts on equipment. I'm just wondering if you.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I had one, there's a public video with David Kersley. It's a long video, so it's kind of hard to get in and out. All of it's like 3 hours, so it's kind of like there's some really good stuff, but we could have probably done that in 10 minutes. But with clip fitting, that was a big part of our business for a long time, my business, and it was something that I love doing it. I don't do it anymore. I believe the reason why I don't do it is I have the tool set to do it. I kind of got out of that game. I just went to straight teaching. That's all I could really have time for. I have all the tools to do it, but I don't know what's great out there and what's not, and what is great is not always great for every player. That's the biggest thing. What I will say with fittings, there's been a lot of changes. The sole of the club with irons is probably the biggest change. It's the sole of the club is really what makes the club now. I mean, they're going to get some engineers that would say otherwise, and I'd say they're right because that's their wheelhouse. But in general, as a fitter, if your sole of the club's really built correctly, they're not going to be putting I shouldn't even say Walmart head, but just an old junk head on it. They're putting really good heads together. All these, not all of them, but a lot of them are putting really good heads together now. So the back end's covered where the center of mass is and the striking and all that stuff is great. And these engineers, but the soul of the club is what I think they've really changed. I think Callaway's done a phenomenal job. Dell did it with wedges and did it, but before them, Score Golf has done a really good job, which is now Ben Hogan Golf. Um, but there's other ones too. I just don't know. The thing with the fitting, in my opinion, is I want to, if I'm fitting irons, I don't want to buy a set of irons. I don't even want to sell a set of irons really unless I know what the turf interaction is. Now, I used to sell them indoors as well. I did some, but I had so much experience outdoor. I had probably 20 years of experience outdoor to 2 years of experience indoor. So when I use my 20 years being outdoor, I know how turf interaction is even on a mat. Now, am I exact? No, but I know, like if you're a digger, I know exactly where I'm going sole wise. I fit more irons based on the sole of the club, but I also based it on consistent. I mean, it's not just sole of the club. Sole of the club is good, and they're getting hot spots. You're hitting it on the toe, and there's different things there. But my philosophy is you need to hit irons off the grass. A lot of times that's going to tell you as a player what clubs are best for you. The fitter, well, if they're having to sell you on the clubs, they're bullshitting you. And that's the way I always felt. I always felt like if I ever had to try to sell somebody the set, of course at the end of the day we're all in business, but I never tried to sell it. Like the player always came back. I always believe this, and I don't remember the last time it didn't happen. But you can go hit all these irons. And so we used to have this big selection of different stuff to hit. I mean, we had everything. And you can hit, and I wanted my players to hit everything, and I wanted to give them my theory of fitting and all that stuff. We walked through the chain. But at the end of the day, I'd have 50 combinations set up for them, different companies, different shafts, different weights, different heads, different all this philosophies. And at the end of the day, there's always about one or two clubs. There was always one, though. There was always one club that was like, man, that company or whatever it was, that combination was, there's just no doubt. And the player knew it. So it made it really simple. Like it wasn't something like I went, man, hey, these new irons that just came out from Callaway or whoever it is, PXG or whatever it is, just came out. They're awesome. Well, how do we know? I mean, so PXG just came out, right? And I haven't hit their irons. But everybody talks about how great they are, but that means nothing to me. Zero. They might be, but they're not going to be for everybody. And that's the point. All it takes is if you're the wrong guy and you go spend $2,000 or $3,000 on a set of irons because they're cool, that's not a good fit. You want to spend whatever you need to spend, and it shouldn't be that much, but it should be whatever you need to spend on your game. And yourself, the fitter is going to give you clubs and tools to hit and all that. That's the job. And you'll keep coming back to what's really pumping out the number you're looking for, either whether it's dispersion and trajectory or how it feels on the turf, whatever it may be. Now, when it comes to drivers, in my opinion, you have hitting indoors, no problem. I don't think the technology is good enough now where I feel like it's pretty consistent. Outdoors, if you can do both, there's a lot of facilities now where you can do both. Take the TrackMan out, or if they have a Foresight, that's what I have. The numbers are very, very similar. You go out and you just test and you test and you test. And you should probably, if you get, you're testing a driver, I think that depends on where you're going, but if you're doing some of the work by yourself, so if you're going to a golfsmith, when I say you're doing some of this work by yourself, if you go into a golfsmith, you're probably going to be doing a lot of fitting by yourself. You're going to be hitting a lot of clubs and you're messing around. Is it going to be a perfect fit? No. Can it be good if you know what you're looking for? They can help you, get you in the guy. Now, if you're working with somebody specifically just 100% fitting, the odds of you getting fit good this day and age is really good, I think, personally. It's going to cost you, but it's going to be worth it. You'll keep your clubs longer. You'll be happy about your clubs, and you won't have to worry about if your clubs are right or wrong. If you have a really good qualified fitter that has a good reputation or facility, whatever that might be, there's some really good ones out there. But I think you need the driver you can do indoor. I like to fit irons outdoor. Or at least I would say, do you mind if I take the irons out and take a couple of these clubs out, hit them at the range, go play with them? They might do that. They may not. They may have you put a credit card on file to do all that. But I always like my players to take. I put up a combination set, especially players I really knew. They weren't going to just take the club and run. I just say, look, just go hit them, go play. Go tee it up and hit it against your driver, hit it against your wedges. And we sold a lot of wedges. We sold a lot of everything, but wedges was big too because it's probably the most unfit, probably the most overlooked and fitting of any club. And so when you get a really good wedge, it's the sole of the club really that makes it essentially. You get the sole of the club right, and it's just night and day the difference, the way the ball comes off and feels and what you feel like you can do and your confidence. If I give you a club that I know the sole of the club that you're not going to hit it, you would think, why do they make those? Well, there's a lot of them out there.